The time is now 6 o'clock. We have some reverb. We'll call this meeting to order, the regular session for the Normandy Joint Executive Governing Board for the Normandy Schools Collaborative on this Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. Ms. Barnett, will we establish quorum?
Mr. Roberts,
Present.
Dr. Petty,
Present.
Mr. Hodge,
Present.
Mr. Humphrey,
Present.
we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving to item 2, public recognition.
Good evening, Board President Roberts and Board members.
Good evening.
Good evening.
2 items this evening.
There, thank you. 2 items this evening that we want to bring in front of you. First item is a literacy grant, book reading grant. Normandy Early Learning Center Family Engagement Liaison Marsha Hayes Harris received a $2,400 grant through Books for STL Kids. These funds allow the Early Learning Center to order enough books to ensure all students started the school off with a book of their own to take home. We know that that's important, and it's a great way to start the school year off. So if Miss Hayes Harris is here. Oh, there you are. The next item that we want to talk about is the Normandy Bureau, which hopefully everyone has had a chance to see driving around the traffic circle. Normandy Fine Arts Director Suzanne Palmer brought together students and art teachers to paint a new mural on the side of the Value Village thrift store building on Natural Bridge Road. With just 7 days to execute the beautification project, the Normandy team created the golf-themed mural to meet attendees who are attending the Ascension Golf Tournament down the street. During the 2-day project, about 50 students added their personal touch to the masterpiece, which features the Normandy Viking and our very own golfer, Anandra Chaney from Normandy High School. Community members and school partners were also on hand participating and encouraging the students. The project was made possible by the students, artists, and the staff from all of our participating schools. So please be sure to visit the art mural if you haven't yet. And we do have a video that we would like to show, and it's just an overview of the project and calls out some of the participants who made it possible. Just pause it while we work on the sound. Not sharing this one.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. All right, so we'll move on to item number 3, adoption of the agenda.
Ron, just before we move on, that presentation, is it possible to be posted to the website if it's not already there?
Sure, Chris, is that going to be happening? Correct.
Okay.
All right. So will be posted to the
Thank you.
website. No problem. Any other questions regarding the presentation? All right. Good. So moving on to item number 3, agenda, I'll entertain a motion. You read the agenda and changes.
So move.
It's been moved. Can I get a second? It's been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same privilege. You guys have it. Moving on to item number 4, transition committee. I'll turn it over to subcommittee chair, Dr. Chris Petty, and also as part of the update, we'll have a space in there for the municipal partnership update as well.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the board again for this opportunity to serve on this transition committee. I will be brief in my remarks this evening and bring you just some very specific updates that I'm sure you're all interested in hearing about. First and foremost, the Missouri School Boards Association has initiated our search for a permanent superintendent, and we are excited about having a full group of candidates that will undergo a rigorous process that will assist us in identifying our new superintendent. To that end, the transition committee has been in discussions with the board members about a board governance retreat that would prepare us to receive our new superintendent. And in doing so, that preparation is simply the board coming together to establish goals for the permanent superintendent in terms of our pursuit for accreditation, and also the board establishing its evaluation process of the superintendent, being able to determine whether or not that individual is meeting specific success criteria. Finally, we will look at these things that are underway to continue to help us support the interim superintendent as we work to transition in the permanent superintendent. This concludes my remarks for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Petty. Are there any questions regarding the transition committee report?
The one question I do have is that I know that with Mr. Brothers been handling the process from MSBA, is he going to reinstitute a timeline around where various activities will take place, so we'll know when the community meetings are, when the board engagement? So I think it would be helpful if he could bring back that comprehensive overview of what the process is.
Sure, he actually has submitted that already to Alex, and we'll get it out to the board, and we'll actually have schedule a meeting with him to talk about that process. So
Okay.
we did lay out a timeline. That's going to involve obviously coordination within the district, but also several community engagement meetings that would be coordinated in conjunction with the municipal partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, that's a good segue to updates from the municipal partnership. Any representation?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Board and board president, and all those who are in attendance. This is an update of what 24-1 municipal partnerships are doing. And before I do that, I want to make sure that I commend those young people who worked on that mural, did a wonderful job. And to them and those teachers, municipal partnerships that have already talked about it, and those young people ought to be commended. Also, we are preparing 24-1 municipal partnership for a meet and greet of candidates, arranging a meeting with Senate candidate Trudy Bush Valentine, and that's tentatively set for October 4th at 5:30, and we will want to include school district leadership, and we'll confirm with school district leadership as soon as we get a confirmation from her campaign. The other thing, we're working on a TDD as a trans-jurisdictional transportation district, which will create a 1% sales tax that will go into a pot that will help with street maintenance, curbs, sidewalks, and other special projects that it will create a pot of money for. Will bring millions to our footprint. Presently, a lot of our money that comes to our municipalities are controlled by others. This would be a pot of money that would be controlled by us, so that the things that we need to get done will get done. The other thing is we have been had a presentation from the Behavioral Health Network at our last meeting. We know that mental health has become a serious issue in our community, and it is all over the United States. I've been in several states over the summer, and all of them have the same issues. And a lot of it has to do with our young people, and it's important for us to make sure we have people in place that know what they're doing to assist these people, assist those individuals through that process so that they come out better on the other side. We are still keeping our eyes open as it relates to the charter school product that have been put in place in our school district, and ask that the board would do the same. Keep our eyes open. They reported they had 125 children. They actually have 94. They said that all of them came from Normandy. But at a closer look, some number of those kids never went to Normandy School District. They pulled them from other school districts, parochial school districts, and they're even campaigning and prodding others to move into our district so that they can get their numbers up. So we're in competition, and municipal partnerships are one with this district, wanting to help in any way we can so that our children could be successful. And then on the other side, parents realize that we have the best product for their children, because we're the only school district that takes every child. The other product in our footprint is not looking to take every child. We're the only school district that takes every child. So we are the better product for the children in our district. So we hope our parents see that over time, and then we can get back to educating our children. The product won't be in our school district if there's nobody at that school. So we look forward to that day when that will come. Until then, we roll up our sleeves with you, and we work hard alongside of you and co-labor so that we can achieve our goal of excellence for our children. That being said, I'll stop there, take any questions if there be any. If not, thank you for allowing us to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Jackson. Any questions for Mayor Jackson. Regarding the municipal partnership update. Any? No? Thank you, Honorable Mayor Jackson, for that update. All right, we're moving on to item number 5, interim update from the interim superintendent, Dr. Ryder.
That my information on the screen. I'm Crystal Ryder, interim superintendent, serving currently in Normandy, and I just wanted to share a short update with the community and the board. This evening, I wanted to share just a bit from the interim superintendent plan that I'm putting in place as of now. Our goals are to increase student achievement in the area of English language arts and mathematics for every individual student, a minimum of a year's growth in a year. And then for students who are significantly behind, we're putting supports in place to ensure students will make a year and a half of growth in a year, until which time the student is early on or on grade level. Also, when official MAP scores are released, which should be in the next couple of months, goals will be set not only for the district, but grade levels, individual schools, teachers, including our leads, principals, and every individual student throughout the organization. So in the area of increased achievement, we need to ensure that the strategic plan is fully aligned to MSIP 6, correct the areas of opportunity, and ensure data collection and analysis is in place to show the evidence of work. Our new teacher and mentoring training. Teachers who are new to the organization need a solid foundation in moving forward. And they need lots of support as they're learning all of the new curriculum and serving our students. This plan is currently in progress and being improved as time goes on. In addition, principal and teacher professional development, I'd also like to add our substitute teachers to this area as well. We have, I believe, 37 short-term and long-term substitute teachers, and we feel that it's critically important that we offered professional development specific to them this summer. And so we spent 2 weeks with our brand new teachers or not 2 weeks with the brand new teachers, but a week with the substitute teachers and then another week with our brand new teachers in specific professional development in classroom management and different curriculum pieces. And then all teachers attended the 3 weeks of professional development prior to the start of the school year. We plan to continue that practice and also in the process reestablish the district professional development committee so that we have more voice in the planning of those activities. Another area of focus is the culture of the school district. First and foremost, safety. Each school this summer, we trained all schools in the foundation of implementing multi-tiered systems of support in order to offer tiered systems for students to fill in the gaps in areas that students need support, because not all children need support in the same areas. So we need to be able to identify which areas students need support in and be able to put research-based interventions in place to make sure that we're offering students the specific supports that they need. Parent involvement, we've had a challenge with this a little bit the last couple of years, obviously due to the pandemic. So another piece of the goal to improve culture is the expectation of every school establishing a parent organization. It could be PTA, PTO, or another organization. And asking our schools to have quarterly parent meetings accompanied with a student either presentation or event or concert or art fair or whatever the school would choose, so that we can get our parents and students into the school in a more relaxed and different atmosphere than what maybe we've experienced the last couple of years due to not being able to be in the buildings a whole lot. Also having one-on-one meetings with cabinet members and directors of each department. Establishing a system of direct communication with staff. We've had some challenges with communication. And so just a couple of ideas you can see on the screen that are listed. But we also need to establish some focus groups or committees to address the areas of MSIP 6. That's a requirement of MSIP 6 to make sure that our strategic plan is being followed and is in place and is being revised as needed in order to continue growth. Also, we want to work intentionally with the communications department. We've talked about this a bit, to tell our own story. We own our narrative, and we have to get out all of the exciting things that are happening around the district and create our own narrative of what's going on, kind of like the art mural that we just saw here at the board meeting. But there's many opportunities to share similar to that. And so we need to get that information out. Another area of opportunity to work on is the area of human resources. Our evaluation system overall has been a bit inconsistent, which causes some confusion. And then providing honest and clear feedback is not always consistent either. And so in order to do that, we have revised our evaluation system so that there is consistent communication about where teachers, principals, myself, our cabinet members are performing and where there are opportunities to improve. Retention, just like students, adults in our organization need to feel a sense of belonging and share in the mission. That's critical to us meeting our goals. And so we need to identify maybe some of the reasons that staff are deciding to leave, and then work really hard to put systems in place to be able to keep our staff with us and to continue the progress. Supervision is also an area of opportunity, making sure that principals have coaching and they also have the time to coach teachers. That's part of the growth process for all. And so being sure that that feedback is being offered and is providing opportunities for growth for everyone in the organization. And then possibly some reorganization of positions or team members. Spaces in the organization might need to be identified and analyzed in order to work more efficiently. Any questions or discussion?
Before we jump into questions and discussion, as part of the update, could you add just, we had our quarterly meeting with Desi today, could you just provide an update, please update on that?
Sure.
And then we jump into questions.
Sure. So today we had a presentation at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we shared basically our enrollment, where we are with academics at this time, according to our iReady data, and then some of our strengths and challenges. Anything else you would like to add?
I think, so the overall, it was a, Dr. Ryder and I presented on the board level, how we're looking. Where are you? Oh, sorry, thank you. The update from the board level is that this year we had two newly elected officials. That is also in coordination with DESI's expectation that next year there will be 2 additional elected officials. But the update there was that Dr. Petty, Dr. Harlan have been elected by our constituency, and they jumped right in with providing the leadership along with the rest of our esteemed board members. The transition committee, how we're working very closely through a number of subcommittees, 2 in particular, the transition committee with the administration to move towards prioritizing tasks that will lead us towards activities to get us to accreditation. And then also, I think providing a little bit more data that Dr. Ryder provided, the overall sense was there was some very penetrating questions asked. Some of the questions we were able to answer, some of them we were not. I think the takeaway though is that we have some follow-up to do as we move towards executing at the board level, at the administrative level, and at the teacher and staff level, so that everybody is accountable for the success of Normandy, and everybody is expected to, at least the message that we delivered is that accountability and expectation that we're all going to work together. We also talked about the strategic partnerships that we have, and what is very critical is that our strategic partnerships, namely with the likes of Municipal Partnership and Beyond Housing, among others, the wraparound services that are needed, because we have, by the time a student gets to our classrooms, they've gone through a number of different traumatic experiences or life experiences that just puts our teachers, our staff at a disadvantage, but nonetheless, they rise to the challenge to provide a good learning environment. So the strategic partnerships that we began with Beyond Housing, Municipal Partnership, and others to allow us to provide those wraparound services to do the best that we can to get those students in a position so that they're ready and available to be taught. And so that learning environment is nurturing so that we can really lend toward the success of our students. So I think overall, that was kind of just at the more execution level that Dr. Ryder hit and provided some data points, and at the board level in terms of us locking arms with our administrative staff and the community. Yes.
I heard it, so I wanted to comment now. I wanted to give you as president of the board, following Mr. Humphrey as president. I was awfully proud that he was there, spoke well, but I'm still proud of your representing this board with the state. And Dr. Ryder, I was pleased with the depth of content, the responses around teaching and learning and data were good, right on. So you guys did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions. My first question would be, first of all, good evening again, Dr. Ryder, how are you?
Good.
My first question would be have we made the distinction between enrollment and attendance, and do we have those numbers by building and grade level? Has that information been shared?
I don't know that it's been shared recently. We have shared it with the board previously. Today, we call today the magical day because it's after the 15 days. If students have not attended, then we can unenroll students because the assumption is that they probably aren't going to be coming. I believe that Ms. Gaskin is still in the process of cleaning up some of that data today. Actually, Dr. Pusateri and I both asked her at different times about high school numbers specifically because we feel like those numbers are still really high. I believe they're at 794 or 795. But I don't believe with our warm body count, because we've been doing that on a daily basis for the last 3 weeks, that it's matching. So there clearly is some work to do at the high school level to clean up that data. But we certainly can put it together for you and make sure that the board receives it.
I pose that question because I believe that not only does the board need to have data that is specific with clarity to make informed decisions, but I think the public also needs to have very specific data. And I want to go on record. I have not received that data. I've requested it several times, and no one seems to be able to provide the actual data for how many students are attending school as opposed to how many students are on our rolls. There is a distinction between enrollment and attendance, and people keep sharing enrollment data, which to some degree is misleading. My next question would be, how do we explain identifying student performance and our student growth in a manner that's not parallel with how the state identifies student performance and student growth. In essence, a more specific question would be, your report outlines measuring student growth with a program called iReady. I'm wondering, what is the equivalency between iReady measures and those measures used by the state to determine student performance that would lead us to accreditation? I asked that question because I believe it's ill-advised to measure student performance in any other way than a way that's commensurate with how student performance will be measured with the state. So how do you reconcile that?
So iReady does measure the Missouri Learning Standards. And there are reports through iReady that we can print for each and every child in the district that talks about to the degree to which students have mastered the Missouri Learning Standards. And the MAP assessment and the ELC assessments also measure the Missouri Learning Standards. And so while pieces of iReady measure, the questions might be a little bit different than maybe how the questions are posed on the map, but there are also opportunities within the teacher toolbox, which we adopted this year through iReady, that actually mirror some of the constructed response questions that MAP has, and some of the manipulation of the tools that the MAP assessment uses as well. So I don't know that they're completely different, because they both measure the Missouri Learning Standards. And at the end of the day, that's what our students are measured upon.
There may be other questions from other board members, so I don't want to belabor the point, but I will make a distinction. I wasn't asking a question about measuring Missouri Learning Standards. Your report referred to measuring growth and performance by one grade level per year. And so what I'm asking is, how do you reconcile that particular measurement being from iReady as opposed to the state? Of course, both can measure the learning standards, meaning both cover the learning standards, both address the learning standards, but that's not meaning that both measure growth and achievement in the same way. But I will go on because I'm sure someone else has other questions and I don't want to belabor the point. I just do have two more questions here that I want to go over. I think that at various points in your report, and I make reference to this in a transition committee report that I submitted to the board, there's several points in the report that just simply lack the specificity and the clarity to give the board any guidance or allow the board to actually follow what's taking place and what's going on. For example, your report mentions that new teachers will undergo training, but there's no indication as to what that training is, what that training looks like, who's responsible for that training, when that training will take place in their onboarding process. Have we identified the training? I think that those are all very relevant questions that really help us understand better what's taking place inside of the district when we have that information. And that's just one final question with the same point. Your report mentions establishing one-to-one meetings with cabinet members. I'm thinking about a meeting in particular within which we held a meeting with the entire leadership team of the district. The district expended funds having a leadership retreat. Everybody was there, everybody was present. And in that 2-day meeting session, most of what was agreed upon by the leaders in the district, by members of your office, by board members, most of it has fallen by the wayside. And so in your report, when you mention one-to-one meetings with cabinet members, I'm just wondering, how do you plan to ensure that those one-to-one meetings won't fall victim to the same fate that the huge leadership retreat meeting fell to? And I can give you one specific example of what I'm referring to. As recent as this past Monday, September 12th, 2022, we had one of our schools with 9 teacher vacancies. If you go back to the leadership retreat meeting where everybody was present, we all talked about a Project Phoenix that was to be in place to cover these teacher vacancies, make sure that we wouldn't have overcrowding in classrooms, ensure that we would not have teachers being pulled from other areas of the district and other services to cover classrooms, ensure that instruction would be in place, teachers would have planning times. On Monday, September 12th, 2022, one of our schools had 9 vacancies that needed to be covered. After that meeting, and I'm focusing on this word meeting, after that meeting that we had with the leadership retreat 2-day meeting, that was followed by a series of meetings with the Project Phoenix Committee, which was then followed by board meetings, which was then followed by an actual live demonstration meeting. With all of those meetings, we still somehow did not meet the mark to address the issue all of those meetings were set up to address. We didn't meet that mark on Monday. And as a result, we did have overcrowded classrooms. We did have teachers missing planning times. And your report also mentions culture. We defeated an opportunity to address our culture issues on Monday. So I say all of that to say that when you mention in your report, we're going to establish one-to-one meetings. Well, it's a lot more to it than establishing one-to-one meetings. And I'm just hoping that in the future, your reports will give us the depth and breadth and transparency that really shows that efforts are truly underway to fully impact not only student achievement, but the needs of the district. I have no further comments.
Thank you, Dr. Petty. Any other questions, comments?
I want to say, excuse me, Dr. Wright, you did mention Project Phoenix, and I thought you said something about it being.
Sheila, you're on mute.
Did you not, did you mention Project Phoenix?
I did at the state meeting.
State,
Yes.
And you also said that that it had been implemented, I think, in mathematics. Is that what
Yes.
you said? So when a scenario is presented, just as Dr. Petty just did,
Mhm.
over here is a story, a film, a presentation.
Mhm.
And over here is the reality. So when we hear these two things, at least I heard both of them, okay?
Mhm.
It's concerning. Whatever happened on Monday, if in fact we have Project Phoenix going,
Mhm.
okay, then that person, whoever did this scenario, could have or should have been able to say, here is where I got some support, here is where I got help with this situation. Otherwise, it sounds like we were doing up high in the sky for the state. That's my comment, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Hodge, for you?
Couple of things. Thank you so much for your presentation earlier. President Roberts referenced the Foundation for Readiness, and you referenced a couple of key things that are important in our strategic plan. One of the first priorities of the strategic plan is safety, and you mentioned the MTSS program as a resource for our students. Can you please speak a little bit to the immediate plan for addressing a sense of safety at our schools and what kind of initiatives are in place just to help us all be aware of the things that are happening to create a sense of safety for our students at the school?
Sure. I mean, obviously, our schools have security officers. I mean, but that's, to me, that's extra support, but it's not really going to solve all of the problems of safety concerns that are occurring. Good supervision and training and de-escalation strategies is needed, not only for security officers, but also our administration and our teachers. Establishing expectations of what that supervision should look like is an area of opportunity, at least at one of the schools that I'm thinking of right now. Tomorrow, actually, we're pulling a group of folks together to brainstorm how we might service one of our schools more efficiently, and determine which supports we need to put in place in that school specifically in order to provide some additional safety precautions. Also, as far as the MTSS process, that is a process in looking at what interventions a student might need, putting interventions in place to help support either academics or behavior, measuring if those interventions are working over time, and then changing them if they're not, or continuing them if they are. And that is, the research has shown that that helps to support the safety of the environment overall. When you're working with a small group of students that are identified that need some additional supports. So that's the whole idea of putting multi-tiered systems of support in place for students.
Thank you so much. And I was very happy to hear you reference creating a sense of belonging in your report. And I understand that you're conducting a series of listening sessions to assess that sense of belonging with our faculty. Thank you so much for your efforts in those areas. I do want to say that I'm particularly excited about the efforts that are being developed in the district around restorative practice in our district, and hope to hear more about that as we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Just to kind of round it out, there were obviously several penetrating questions asked during the presentation. One question in particular, well, two, was posed by our own rep, Pamela Westbrook Hodge. And one, she said, how can we help DESE? And then two, what is it, is the issue related to something systemic that translates to execution? Or is there a broader issue that, you know, we could potentially, and it came back around to how can we help? So those are, you know, when you're asked questions like that, you know, we got to be able to have a response. If nothing else, you know, framing the pain or the problem so that we can rally around a solution. I think that the next time we go before DESE, but even long before that, and I think Dr. Petty is kind of hitting, not alluding to it, but really directly hitting it, is that what's the problem? Once we frame the problem, what's the pathway towards a solution? And in between that, what's the execution process so that we can be efficient in getting to those solutions? The other thing that has been predominant is that parent involvement. Talking to the municipal partnership, beyond housing, just in the community, and conversations just with staff, teachers, and otherwise. And I'm seeing it, parents and particularly in the community, and as we're getting some of the feedback, how can parents become more involved? They're asking about organizations, the parent-teacher organizations, coming up to the school, volunteering. That is one critical element that we cannot underestimate in terms of giving parents the opportunity to be involved and engaging them so they can be active participants in our process. So I think I wanted to just round out the discussion about, you know, the DESE update on down to, you know, we deal with the brass tacks of how are we going to tackle some of the enormity of our problems, but prioritizing them and hitting them hard. So I just wanted to leave you with that.
I do have, I do appreciate Ms. Westbrooks and her service, Ms. Westbrooks Hodge and her service, the Honorable Mrs. Pamela Westbrooks Hodge and her service, because that simple question really helps us better understand why we're here. And why we're here is simply this. If Harlan Hodge poses a question about safety, that execution, that systemic piece that you talk about, we start with the simplest things first. We know that all of the research is clear that as it relates to safety, our first step that's in the palm of our hand is simply presence and visibility. And we know that that is not being addressed. We don't have the presence that we need at the high school, and we don't have the visibility of key individuals in strategic areas of that campus. So that's systemically, that's where we start. It doesn't cost us money to be visible and be present. We don't need a meeting to be visible and be present. But systemically, the quickest way for your systems to fail is to not follow your own system. And if our system is that people should be visible, have duty posts, assigned duty posts, and they should be at those duty posts at designated times, that's simple. That's systemic. That's execution. And that's what we have to get to. And those individuals at the state can't help us do that. That's something we have to do internally. When you talk about aligning student performance with a program versus how the state measures student performance, have we identified the priority standards that our teachers should be focusing on and teaching right now? Have we done that? And where is the data on that? That shows that we've done it effectively, because teachers and principals are reporting that they do not have the priority standards. So if we start talking about measuring growth first, before we put in the hands of teachers and building leaders the information that they need to plan instruction that's going to lend itself to students acquiring skills, then we're doing something wrong. We can't talk about 1 to 2 years of growth if the teachers don't have the priority standards coming from the state that they should be focusing on based on student performance data. One final example, and these are examples that I'm expressing because I'm imploring the board and district leadership to get behind what makes good common sense and is right here in the palm of our hand. If we want to talk about parent engagement, if we want to talk about parent involvement, as a board, we're currently spending money on a system that includes a key stakeholder that we just honored here tonight in this room, family engagement liaison. I still see the young lady sitting right back there. But what efforts, what touch points, what interactions have we had with the family engagement liaisons across this district so that we could really see what we need to do to involve parents, to engage parents? That's what we put them in place for. That's what a strategic partnership is for. So Sheila Williams is absolutely right. We got a lot of pie and a whole lot of sky when we're talking about parental involvement, and we haven't gone to our very own family engagement liaisons to talk to them because they're in the middle of two key stakeholders. Do we know who those two key stakeholders are that they're in the middle of? Parents and students. So if we want to engage parents, why would we not go right there to the family engagement liaisons that are with our partner organizations? This is the systemic piece that we should be focusing on. And this is the language that should come before this board in every single report so that we are informed about what's happening and what's going on. Please excuse my comments if I've taken up too much time.
Quite all right. Appreciate the conviction. Any other questions? Comments?
I think as I listen to the discussion begs for us as a board to develop laser-like focus around those things that we deem to be important. You know, earlier in the presentation, I talked about going back to the board governance retreat. I heard during the presentation, it says we're waiting on the DESE data to come out in the fall to set goals, too late. We have last year's data, which is just as good as the data coming in the fall. My suggestion is that we take a look at last year's data, disaggregate that data, and determine what it is saying to us around students' ability to read, students that are multiple years behind in their learning. One of the things I have not heard in the multiple meetings I've been at is the level of student support that is needed to drive the machine of getting student improvement. When you got students that are 2 and 3 years behind in learning, it doesn't happen by osmosis. We have to put some systems in place that are going to support children. And so I'm not sure what that is. That's the what. So we just need to know from administration, what are we going to do to move the needle for kids that are on target, kids that are 1 year behind, kids that are multiple year behind. And as a board, it's incumbent upon us to be clear around the data that we need to see to know that the district is moving. And right now, we've had lots of conversation, but we need to focus that conversation around management tools that we can use. And that was part of when we had conversation earlier about moving towards board retreat. There are some board developmental things, one of which is developing a board dashboard. So we know if the things that are critical to us is student attendance, if the things that are important to us is staff attendance, because I know that when you brought up the example that there was anywhere from 5 to 8 teachers that are missing, that's a combination of both substitute and regular teachers at that particular school. And see, Phoenix is designed to work when you have a long-term sub in the room. When that person is not there, it causes folks to gather classes up. Now classrooms are larger than they need to be. So the first thing we got to address is how do we get people to come to work on a consistent basis? Because one of the things I often remind us of is that we are an educational institution and not an employment agency. We've got to come to school to work with the intention of helping kids to get better. And so, like I said, once again, last year's data will tell us almost as much as the data coming out in the fall. And that's the reason why I think we need to look at that data and work with the data that we do have until new data comes, and then we can make the necessary adjustments. I'll stop there. When we get to board comments, I do have a few things to say about Project Phoenix because I noticed it wasn't on the agenda, but I'll bring that up in my comments. So I'll simply stop there because I can continue to go, but I don't want to do it.
Sure, and I will, we will do that. Oh, Ms. Williams.
Given what Mr. Humphrey just said, Dr. Whitaker, is it Whitaker? Todd? Anyway, from University of Missouri, said something that I think Mr. Humphrey has been saying for a long time. The state owes us some teachers.
Amen.
He said all of this planning, all of the culture talk, all of the curriculum talk, all of it, PD, everything else depends upon whether or not you've got the horses. We don't have the horses. That's another reason it was important to implement with fidelity the Phoenix Project, because we were using the horses we have, the good horses, the strong horses, in place to move our kids. So I think we, as Mr. Humphrey has said before, we really do have to focus on what's important. We've got to get outside ourselves, okay, and focus out here on what's important.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And actually, Mr. Humphrey, you did bring up a good point. And while we're on updates, do you want to provide the update now for Project Phoenix? Because I think that would be appropriate.
Now, a couple of things that the information that I have here says that Project Phoenix is still operational, that there are some current issues with technology around bandwidth, because apparently in some of the classrooms, there's a little machine called I'm on mute again, I keep forgetting. The little white box, whatever it is, whatever it is, it's the one that takes the signals into the room. It's the access points, yes. Apparently, there were some issues where there were some issues around bandwidth where I know on one particular day, the link broke and instructions stopped momentarily. I do know that Zoom has also changed their platform. And I know that with the change of the platform, I know that Zach and IT is currently working on some things, because a lot of times when you're working with technology, like say, for instance, with Facebook as an example, it's almost like they changed it. Some technology they're changing multiple weeks, and what worked one way one week, the next week they're doing something else. So right now they're looking at the bandwidth issue. They're looking at making the necessary adjustment because of the change to the platform in Zoom. The teachers are building relationship with students and sharing data with students weekly. The information I was given was that teacher attendance has been a problem, causing classrooms to be overcrowded in some situations, and managing new teachers, managing students and new teacher needs has been a challenge for the master teachers, because the master teachers are the ones, along with the leads from curriculum and instruction, that have initially started out that process. And right now the math is actually being done by a math lead out of C&I. So so when you start to get ready to move to the next phase of rollout, because Phoenix has actually started in Lucas Crossing and Barack Obama, and only one of those two schools had it seems like on any given week, they said that the attendance, it says there's at least 5 to 8 teachers missing per day. And so that's a challenge when you're trying to work with a process where you have a lead teacher or a master teacher piping in instruction, and that substitute or that teacher has to be teacher of record in order for those things to happen. And when people don't show up, it creates issues. And so one of the things I'm going to do over the next week, I'm going to spend a little bit more time getting a little closer to what's happening in Phoenix, so that we can really get a clearer picture of exactly what those challenges are, because the whole thing about Phoenix was designed around long-term subs being in place, building their capacity by zooming in, the more quality instruction. And then there's also, apparently there's been a few absences due to COVID as well. So between regular absence and COVID, it's been an issue there. So right now, that's kind of, Phoenix is operational. It has some challenges because some people have been absent that need to be in place. So we'll work through that. And next month is the intention of the Phoenix committee to have a more formalized presentation to the board.
Thank you for that, Mr. Humphrey. I think that concludes the updates as far as the interim superintendent update and updates related to Project Phoenix. With that, are there any other comments regarding updates? None? Okay.
Well, I did one other question. We did talk about earlier in one of the presentations, we talked about the board governance retreat, goals, evaluation process, things of that nature. Are we wanting to get that back on the calendar again? If so, I just need to know how I should be working in there as well.
Right. So I think the intent is to have, so we have to coordinate the priorities for around the board retreat, because I think we've talked about that a little bit. You brought up some in terms of board governance, which I think is important, but I think we some more investment of time in an accelerated way, so we can really prioritize what it is that we're going to accomplish in that board meeting. I think we're rolling up our sleeves, we're working. I think a board retreat at some point is important, but I think we need to put some more work in terms of what our priority is going to be when spending that time together.
Okay, and if I could suggest, Dr. Petty and Tilla, would you all be available within the next week or two, just the three of us to get together to kind of carve out a draft of what that might look like?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look at that execution.
And then that way we can come back together and talk to the board about, what it is we think we're getting ready to embark on. So I'll initiate the, do we want it to be in person or by phone? It doesn't matter. What's your preference?
I'm available either way.
Okay. We'll talk sometime tomorrow. We'll figure out when we'll meet and then we'll make that happen.
So with that, so the next week, 2 weeks, you'll meet, and then what's your timeline in terms of being able to get back to the board collectively?
Well, at this point, the plan was, I guess, to get back to us at the next available board meeting unless for some reason you want. I know in the month of October, I'm going to be out of pocket for at least 10 days, but that doesn't stop the board from moving forward. But right now, we just need to carve out what it is we think we want to do, and then we can figure out the timing of it.
And you can determine that offline. What I'm really trying to get at is, look, we threw a lot of things out there. We got to start managing the timelines, and that's for everybody.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're pretty good about that, but I think that's a global comment in terms of, what we're, everybody at every level in this district is accountable. So we got to start setting the goals, the objectives, and manage to a timeline.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. When we get together, what we'll do, we'll first of all determine what it is we want to do, and then we can lay out what we think the time parameters will be around. If there's a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, we can talk through that and figure out what it looks like.
Sounds good. Appreciate that. All right, we'll move on to item number 6, item for consent. You've seen those on board docs. The items are listed. We can move to item number 7. Entertain a motion to approve, and we can have the discussion as part of the voting process. All right, it's been moved. Can I get a second? It's been moved and probably seconded that we approve the agenda items as consent agenda items as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same privilege. The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 8, item for action, East Hill audio visual package for Little Theater. Dr. Terry.
Convening board members, Unity and staff members. Representative from KAI and I are ready to present briefly on this item for action. In summary, this is a request that the board approve the selection of Lee as the vendor to provide audio visual package for the Little Theater at East Hall with the cost of $186,483. The projected expense was about $200,000, so it's just under the projected. Back in January, the board approved Lawler to be our contractor for East and Central for about $17 million. And those spaces did include the auditorium in the East Hall State Theater. Mr. Mooney and KAI team led the leadership to identify what exactly they wanted when it comes to sound, lighting, and the overall space. There was an RFP issued about a month ago, August 4th. We advertised for a couple of weeks in local newspapers, posted on the website, reached out to various planning and community organizations.
Sorry, question. Who led the discussion to determine what we needed in the theater?
TRI.
Who was that?
TRI.
You said TRI. And who was TRI?
They're your architect.
Okay.
I want to ask a similar question. We're 5 more people here. You're talking about what we do. Yeah.
Yes.
Who was that? Was that Dwayne or who?
Dwayne Foster.
Is the only one? Okay. All right. I want to know.
Just before you, she brings up an interesting point because I know that we just have a new finance person for the district, and I think she's going to she'll be seeing this presentation for the first time tonight. She's in the room, but I think it's incumbent that she gets a chance to visit on what's there. So if there's if there's something that needs to be nuanced, she at least has an opportunity to weigh in on it. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Maybe $200,000.
Been trying to do it for many years now, so yes.
There was an on-site bid walkthrough with bidders on August 18th. They received 2 bids on the 25th. There were interviews conducted on the 29th. The low bid was about over 20% more than lower than the higher bid. And the low bidder is also a firm with whom we have had a good experience before. With those criteria, we recommend proceeding with Elite. If the board approves, KEI will proceed with deducting the value of this bid from Lawler's contract allowances and will help us move forward. There's no new cost here. It's just all coming out of the money that the board had already approved when they selected Lawler to do this work, the work on East and Central back in January. At this point, are there any questions?
Yes, so at this point, what you're saying is that this expenditure has previously been approved by the board.
The bid package,
So the Lawler contracts, the design team was trending very late on the timing, schedule, we could construction started.
I just need to know, has the expenditure been approved by the board or not? Because I'm trying, if it's already been approved, then why are we approving it again tonight?
So within Lawler's contract, there's an allowance for undefined work. We define it as improvements to the library, improvements to the lower county.
All right, so now we're getting somewhere. So we had an allowance for undefined work, but that undefined work was not the sound system in the Little Theater. It was just
It was
undefined work.
seating, it was, lighting. This AP system came about later, but it had to be carved out of the allowance that we created
Right.
on the flyer.
So we had a line item in there for undefined work that was not the work that's being defined tonight. And you're saying, you're acknowledging that the work that's being defined tonight came about later. So I'm just trying to figure out, if we were building a little theater, why didn't all of this come up in the initial project? Why was this not all in the initial proposal?
Your architects didn't have it.
I'm actually asking Mr. Pusateri.
our architects failed to be on time on many aspects of work with them.
So who internally, if our architects fail us, who is it internally that's responsible for that? I mean, listen to what you're saying. We enter into an agreement that in essence adds a balloon amount of money for nothing. We don't even know what the nothing is. Then all of a sudden, why don't you provide us with the date for when this was first done? What was the date? Excuse me. Let's just say months ago, this all came up. And there was a balloon amount of money for undisclosed, undefined expenditure. And then months later, all of a sudden, we figure out something to spend the money on. If in fact we had planned to build a theater from the start, why wasn't the sound system included in those plans from the beginning? Why does it make sense to include a sound system now? Where did that discussion come up? How did that come about? How did that serve us?
My understanding, and I invite Mark, after I give my best answer to it, I'll ask if it's okay, Mr. Moon, to fill in any gaps after to make sure that he has all the information. My understanding is that our architect was behind schedule much of the time as they were doing their drawings. We felt pressure and felt the need to have the project completed actually before the start of the school year, which it's not. Our goal was to get it out for bid, even if the drawings were finished. So we said, you know what, our TRI, you guys do this. We need to get it out for bid. You guys do it as soon as you can. Well, we're going to project an allowance for it, but we need to get these things done. And they didn't have it done. So what I understand, it might be called a white box to say this part hasn't been drawn yet by the architects. It was either that or we delay another 6 months or however longer it was for TRI to get their stuff together. We have been through 3 architects. We're in our 3rd architect with them. We have essentially fired them. We've moved on to a different architect for any work on the West Gym renovation. So we recognize that they are underperforming and we need to move on to another vendor. And then is it okay if I ask Mr. Mumi to fill in anything I might be missing?
Well, I mean, you can ask him whatever you want to ask him. What I'm asking you is, how do we decide that we're going to build a theater and that does not include this sound system? However, we set aside an amount of money undisclosed expenses. We don't know what it's for, undetermined, whatever the term was that was used here in this meeting tonight. And then all of a sudden, we decide that this money is being used for a sound system. I'm just trying to figure out the pattern of how all of that happened. And if you kind of replay some of my other comments tonight, there's a natural order for how things should happen. And I'm trying to figure out, how is it that we always take the path that avoids the natural order of things? It doesn't make sense.
If I could, I just wanted to clarify the discussion. Now, as it relates to the theaters, we're actually talking about two different spaces. The one space would have been where the garden used to be. There was a thought about putting in a 1,200 seat theater there if the second bond issue had passed. That's something totally different. What these dollars are is retrofitting an existing space. We've already approved the replacement of the theater chairs. And so this is just bringing in the sound equipment and the lighting to actually upgrade a room that should have been upgraded 20 years ago. So it's not like they're building a new theater. This is just the additional money to bring in the lighting and the sound for that particular room. Now, I did notice from that presentation, I thought was good, that some of the equipment in the new theater is actually interchangeable to use between that and Viking Hall. So you got multiple use with that. But I just want to clarify that we're talking about two totally different projects.
Yes, I understand that. I'm very clear that we're talking about two totally different projects. I think that we have, in my short tenure of being on the board, there has been a pattern of change orders and additional unanticipated expenses and even unresolved issues that continue to linger, just like the water problem that we currently have at the high school. So when you look at this pattern that's prevalent, it's not something we have to unearth, it's prevalent here in Normandy. And when we look at the ongoing problems that persist, like the water problem, I think that as an elected official, those citizens that are taxpaying individuals, they want to know how and why we're spending money. And if we as board members don't ask the questions so that they understand, so that our constituents, the citizens, the taxpayers understand how and why we're spending money, that's a problem. And we have taxpayers in this very room that don't understand what you're talking about. And that's why I'm asking the question. Because I know that my taxpayers are telling me, I don't understand, ask another question, Dr. Petty. So I'm asking the question, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to belabor the point. The issue is, it seems odd that when we decided to build the theater, there was not an allotment for a sound system. There was an allotment for something else. We don't know what. We just going to allot $200,000. Then all of a sudden, we come up with this decision that this allotment is going to be for a sound system. And if in fact, all of this was approved in the beginning, then all of it should have been approved in the beginning. Why are we coming back to approve it now? I just don't understand it.
Well, just to clarify to the asking now, originally when the proposal came forward, was there a budget grade number to put it in for sound system? I know that there was conversation about upgrading the theater, but in those original numbers, was it a budget grade number that we were working from or approving it? Because if it was a budget grade number, then this simply comes back with the bids and say, okay, here's how we're going to use the money that we allocated. So I just need to know, I know that allows us to talk about that. Was there money in the original proposal in the East to upgrade, to do all the necessary upgrades in the theater? Even though there would not have been an estimate that we did, we just not getting an estimate. So was there at least a budget grade number?
Everything around this would be our thing. What sort of work they have to go.
Okay.
In the theater, there was a line item for lighting, theater lighting.
Okay.
It's not $200,000. It's way lower. I don't think I have the notes. I get it. What happened from then was you look at all the sorts of work that are happening inside. library was an allowance area, the lower conference was an allowance area, and the little theater was an allowance area. We looked back at what we initially budgeted on, the architect told us was going to be the finished award. And we looked at some value engineering ideas to save money in those spaces, to try to afford some of these items, like you said. The improvements to the little theater are pivoted from where the group was headed before, because there was this concept of future larger theater performances. This little auditorium was going to be what it might be now. The group that we work with, the bond teams, Dr. Sudari and others, said there's an academic need now without a future for this 1,200 seat auditorium. We need to look at the potential improvements to the little theater. So we would work through a budget scenario where we value engineered some other tasks that are yet to be committed in those three spaces I mentioned, and freed up funds to potentially accomplish some of these items. This is not committed cost here. This is just a bid. You can accept or reject it. We produced this because there's an academic need for it and a request from the bond team to look at a way to achieve this.
I would encourage the board to reject this bid on the grounds that not conservative estimates, but moderate estimates place the cost for this type of sound system somewhere around the neighborhood of $125,000. I would be interested in identifying exactly what equipment, how many pieces of equipment, what's the lifespan of these pieces of equipment, so that we can really get down to whether or not we're getting the taxpayers what they need. And I apologize if somebody is uncomfortable with this discussion, but I'm more uncomfortable not being accountable to our taxpayers. This is not the first time we've had this issue. We've had this issue with lockers. We've had this issue with doors. And now we got an issue with no water at the high school. And if we continue to allow this kind of back and forth banter without simply getting things done in a timely fashion and at a reasonable cost, we're going to keep spinning our wheels. What is happening on the construction side is emblematic of what's happening internal on the academic side of our schools. Just a bunch of talk back and forth and wheels spinning. So I would urge the board to reject this bid.
Marcus, what are the, or Dr. Terry, what are the schedule implications of delaying this process?
So the real issue is the coordination between the AV vendor and the electrician on site. If you don't proceed with the AV work, the electrician finishes their work on time. If you bring them on, we'll coordinate that. We'll have to drop power and data to a few more locations to host this new equipment. But you could potentially do this AV work whenever you want. It's going to be more cumbersome when the chairs are installed. Be above there doing house lights and lighting bars and things. Not possible, but so you could decline this. All the details in here, piece by piece, what they're buying, amps, speakers, the projector specs, everything's in this, the board doc. So we got two competitive bids, same scope of work.
Okay. So I wanted to kind of add to what Dr. Petty just said. There is an overarching issue, right? The issue of how we plan and execute things on the academic side and on the real estate side. On the real estate side, we've had some planning activities that have taken place that are associated with bond issuance and the capital improvement projects. We've talked about how we prioritize those projects, because some projects are, are they going to lead to the things that we need to get us to accreditation? Not so much. But those projects that are, we prioritize those. So we talk about a real estate plan. We really don't have a real estate plan. So we're working towards that end. Long story short, the architects that we had before, they designed phases of our improvement projects. They had many gaps, which was why we decided to go out and get an owner's rep that had not only construction experience, but also design experience, so we can work on some of these gaps. Those gaps occurred years, many moons ago, so to speak. And now we're trying to make sure that we can add some efficiency, right-size drawings, right-size projects, so that we're not, we're spending money wisely. Is that fair to say? So, but I think, so the balancing act here is to make sure that we have buildings that are designed well enough that contractors can bid on them and we can get good prices, not understanding what's happening in the marketplace with supply chain demand and cost escalations. So, but to add clarity to this, we've been, this balancing act has been taking place for a few years now, but more specifically with this latest bond issue, it's because we had a set of drawings that design components of our phases of development that just were incomplete, they were flawed. And we didn't discover those until we got the expertise to really comb through them and find out where the gaps were. Is that fair? Hence the engagement of our owner's rep, who adds value in terms of design and construction. As a board member, I've been involved in that, and it's been frustrating. I'll say that, but nonetheless, we committed to it. We got to work through it. So the bottom line is, hear you loud and clear. What are the implications? Is something, the first question I'll ask is how does this impact, the learning environment for our accreditation? And I don't want to be that clinical or simple about it, but if we're gonna have many more discussions like this as we start to comb through it, because we got board composition that's different, and it's important that we comb through it anyway, notwithstanding composition. So.
If I can respond to that, we talked with Dr. Stockman. He envisions a future where larger classes are gathered in a space where there is a big screen of piped in instruction or an expert speaker from the East Coast or something who's speaking to the students, and they can be heard very well and seen very clearly. That also complements the performing arts, which as we talked about, wasn't really in the original plan because we thought we were going to build this other big thing. This is the place where the students would be able to continue the performances that Ms. Palmer has taken on.
Okay. So we got to get to a vote, but because this is an item for action, heard loud and clear. Ms. Williams.
Did you say that the things that Dr. Teddy is asking for are in order documents that he submitted?
Yeah, complete breakdown of every single component down to the microphones, the amps, the speakers, it's all listed exactly what's in the quote.
Or this proposal, but not the other. That's the one that you submitted.
The other one, the other bidder, or
Yeah.
I did not include that board docs, but it's Dr. Musteri has
It's
got
21% cost, 21% more with a little bit less stuff installed.
Mr. Hodge.
Obviously, we've got some trust issues, right? And that is the underlying challenge with this district that Dr. Petty is referencing. When we don't feel good about the process, we will ask a lot of questions. It should be a no-brainer that we should have a theater with a top-notch facility for performances. We know that we're trying to make school a place where not only students, but teachers and everybody else want to be there. And schools should have theaters with up-to-date equipment. And it makes sense to do it now as opposed to doing it later. What is holding us up right now is distrust. I think that it makes sense for us to do this. I look through the equipment. The equipment is all listed, but it's not listed the way that Dr. Petty has asked by prices and to know what we're paying for. You have to help us feel a greater sense of trust when we're talking about these things. When these things pop up, new expenses, we are traumatized by these things. You got to help us as a community understand why we're spending more money, where it comes from. But we've got to do a lot more to develop trust around the board. So with that being said, I am in favor of this expenditure, but I'm also in favor of helping us understand how do we build more trust when it comes to these expenditures and the decisions that we make as a district.
If I can answer that quickly, and then we can go to the vote. So what I charged or asked Dr. Pusateri to do was to establish a real estate committee that to focus on establishing a real estate plan for the district. Because we have a lot of, to use Ms. Williams' term, we have a lot of pie and a lot of sky. But, you know, it's not really, you know, it's really, it seems abstract because there's a lot of movement, but we're not planning the projects as a real estate project should, but particularly as it relates to activities that take place in a school, in an academic institution. So even in how we prioritized our projects, you know, we had a priority schedule a year ago, 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure that's obsolete right now, given our priorities and given our focus as a board on, you know, what's important to us and what we're determining what's important to us. Long story short, that, and I just to Dr. Busuteri, that real estate committee that meets monthly, probably increased frequency. There needs to be a focus on where we are with our design and our phasing, because it's important for us to weigh in as a board on what's important for us to build right now as it relates to getting us towards accreditation. We shouldn't throw any money after anything that does not lead to our accreditation, but in the grand scheme of things, do we need an auditorium versus a tech lab, or however that, I'm just making it up. So the real estate committee doing your homework to give an update of the design. That real estate committee is also charged with, we need to come up with a concept, whatever that is, to go to the community. We have to have a direct, engage the community so that they can have an opportunity to weigh in on us. This is all in charge to that real estate group. We've also talked about expanding scope of KAI, who's added a lot of value, because program management is really what you're talking about. We don't have an internal mechanism, or we haven't had an efficient internal mechanism to allow us to manage architects so that they can design buildings and projects that can allow us to avoid some of these gaps that we're talking about. And then also to coordinate the construction activities. This water issue is a lack of coordination because it wasn't defined, and it became an issue when it was needed. So that's a coordination issue. Now, who's that coordination? Is that coordination KI? No, well, maybe, but or is it coordination? They inform our staff on what to do, and it gets done. So there's a gap there. So long story short, this real estate committee that meets monthly, it's on you to figure it out. There needs to be a review, a thorough review with staff, the board. Otherwise, to come up with that base concept, we need to engage the community so that we come up with a real estate plan that everybody's equally uncomfortable or equally satisfied, but we got a plan on how we're going to improve this school so that we can have a great learning environment that's innovative and that can allow us to produce the excellence that we're looking for. So that's my soapbox.
Quick question to clarify, the real estate committee, does that also include the district facility plan as well? Is that part of that whole process?
Yes. Okay. Yep. And that frequency may
Yeah, because we don't have one of those right now.
Right. We are deficient in a lot of things that we need to figure out in very short order.
I want to be very clear. My family, we're season ticket holders at the Muni, the Black Rep, and even the Manhattan Theater Club in New York. I myself am a recipient of a performing arts scholarship. It was how I was able to go to college. I'm very much in support of the arts. I'm very much in support of our students having a state-of-the-art facility. I agree with Mr. Hodge that yes, we want the best for our kids. The campus is beautiful, and we want to equip it with the state-of-the-art equipment and things that would really allow our students to show off their best work. So I want to be clear that I'm in favor of that. What I'm not in favor of, and what the community is not in favor of, what taxpayers are not in favor of, is sitting in a meeting like this, and all of a sudden, our hair is on fire, and we got to do this tonight. We don't have to do this tonight. Let's take a look at it. That's all I'm asking. I'm very much in favor of our students having the best. And if it costs $200,000, that's what it costs. You know, I've attended, you know, plays and shows, and I think that, you know, it was probably the two of us that had a discussion about taking some of our students to the Muni this summer, and I thank the president for his leadership. We made that happen. So I want to be clear, this is not about not being in support of it. It is about the fact that our hair is on fire, and all of a sudden we got to do it tonight. It is about the fact that our water is not working at the high school, and we got an email or a memo just recently saying that it still may not be on. We're expecting to host citizens and members of the community this weekend, and we don't have the water running. So how are we having a discussion about sound equipment and we don't even have water running? I've been elected to the board since April 5th. We never heard anything about sound equipment for a little theater. And all of a sudden, sound equipment for a little theater comes up as an issue. This is what makes for trust issues. And I want to be very clear about this as well. One of the central tenets for building relationships that I have attempted to bring to this board and to the district was expressing the importance of extending trust. I don't always believe that trust is always earned. Sometimes trust is extended. And we extend trust because we're in this together and we're working together. So I'm not naturally distrustful, even though that is the issue. You're absolutely correct. That is the issue. I'm saying that there's a pattern that has emerged that causes us, if we have our eyes open and we're rational-minded, rational-thinking individuals, these things beg the question. And so it's not anything that we have to do tonight. We should be able to look at this information because I'm not a sound engineer. I have no background in sound engineering and acoustic wavelengths and anything like that. So it would help to have an opportunity to really vet this and see where are these other estimates coming from. How are people in the community able to produce estimates around 125,000, yet our estimates are, you know, near 200,000. We have paid extra for lockers. We paid extra for doors. We keep paying extra. If anybody should get a discount, it should be school districts. That's the one entity in our society. School districts and hospitals ought to get some kind of public service discount. School districts, hospitals, firemen, why do we always have to pay the up costs? I'm speaking on behalf of the citizens and the taxpayers that put me here. This is what they want to know. And so I'm asking everybody to understand that we're not in opposition to the performing arts. My life would not be what it is today had it not been for the great Dr. Doris Wilson and allowing me the opportunity to sing in her show choir and sing bass in the choir. And we traveled to New York. We performed on Carnival Cruise Lines. We performed at Disney World. So I am very much in support of this, very much in support of this. I just believe we need to do it in a manner that allows, as Harlan eloquently put it, allows us to be comfortable with it and allows the taxpayers to be comfortable with it, our citizens and our constituents to be comfortable with it.
May I ask a couple follow-up questions before the vote?
Sure.
I'm just trying to kind of piece through what if the board votes no, what some action steps you might consider. One might say reduce the scope somewhat to have a slightly lesser products and then put it back out for bid. Another might be to have the same RFP with the same stuff and then try to maybe see if we can identify more vendors than we did this way. We did kind of run through all of our normal advertised multiple weeks, multiple papers, went to a number of drawing rooms and other spaces. But again, maybe we can approach that if the board does vote no, and because I'm not sure kind of the actions to take as a result.
Sure. You want to address that first?
Absolutely. When you go to the car dealership to buy a new car, you want a deal, don't you? Or do you want to pay above the sticker price? It's my understanding that cars now are selling above the sticker price. So that's why I don't have a new car. I don't want to pay above the sticker price. I don't want to pay the sticker price. I want a deal. We want to make sure that this school district gets the best deal. And as long as I'm sitting here, that's what I'm looking for, is for the school district to have an obvious, identifiable, best possible deal on every piece of business that we do. That's what the next steps are going forward. I don't think that's a difficult question at all.
So my response to that is, one, I think it goes back to the fundamental question. If we approved it previously, it was already in the budget, why are we here? That's one. Two, if you've already gone through the process, and, you know, KAI has done a very good job of beating up contractors, issuing RFP, requests for proposals. What is it that, you know, you haven't done that would convince us to move beyond no, if there is a no?
I don't know in terms of finding bids. I can see reduced scope. I was meeting with 18 CFOs within the last week, and the construction market and the cost escalations. This was a shared concern with other CFOs and their boards. The costs are a lot higher right now. The delay times are much longer. It's one of the worst times to be in construction.
So if the scope is appropriate to deliver what those people who are going to occupy that space, it's appropriate technically, and otherwise, they have utility in it. Then I'm not one for diminishing the quality of what we're looking for, because we have a debate that is, you know, beyond really what's at hand.
I think that's an approach. So thank you for saying that. I did have one follow-up question. The board, the leadership was in a monthly pattern of giving a board update on construction. There was a board suggestion around April and May to kind of put that on hold. The board may consider asking again for us to do that up again so that we can give you those regular updates. It may give the board a chance to see some things coming down the pipe, so it's not as kind of surprising. Something to consider.
Right. I'm wondering. No, I appreciate that. With clarity, and I think this may involve a more technical response from you, Marcus. If we approve this scope of work with you know, knowing that we were going to go into a gray area to better define the design allowances, and it's in the budget, then why are we here?
I believe there's a couple of reasons. One is the board approved our procedure for change orders. So if it is a change order, any change order over $100,000 needs board approval. So that's why we're here.
Okay, but it's a change order. The net effect of the change order is not an increase in the cost, right?
We've been counting change orders, even if they go to the allowance as a change order. So even those ones that are $10,001, if it goes to the allowance and doesn't take any more money out of our pocket, that still goes to the smaller committee to sign that.
Okay, so no matter whether it's the net effect is zero or otherwise, the amount
Every
triggers.
single item, any combination of items, positive or negative, if it's over the threshold, we take it through that process.
That's an important information to have. Do you understand what they just said?
I think that this discussion is kind of taking us into a different place at this point. So I think I just want to continue to say, you know, we need to look at the process and ensure that there's, you know, real vetting of the costs. We need to look at the process and make sure that the board has time to actually look over and be aware of what we're voting on. We need to have some relative assurances in accordance with our own board policy that there is minority contractor participation in these things. There are any number of issues around this that just says that we should be cautious about it. Again, I'm not thinking that we want our kids not to have this. We do want our kids to have. We just want to make sure it's the right thing. And we want to make sure it's done the right way and the costs are reasonable. And we just need some check. And what's concerning is that we have an individual standing before us that's not simply saying that. See, that's what's most concerning is an individual say, Simply that I can go back and get some price comparisons. I can go back and look at what this costs in the city of St. Louis, maybe across the nation, what's the average cost. I can get you some examples of what this has cost in other situations. We don't hear anybody saying that they really want to give us the information that I'm asking for. And that's what the biggest concern is. Yes, we're asking the question about if it was approved, why are we here now? If it's to some degree, we know something wasn't approved. We may not know the exact, intricate, nuanced, detailed, idiosyncratic issue that wasn't approved, but something was approved. That's why we're here tonight. What is relevant and pertinent is that we don't have an individual standing before us saying, I stand behind these costs. You won't find these materials and this equipment for less than this amount of money. This is the average cost. I can point you in the direction of 4 or 5 little theaters that have been constructed with similar materials at the same cost or more. That's what I'm listening for, and I'm not hearing. And so again, we want our kids to have the best, but I don't think that our hair is on fire right now for that. What our hair is on fire about is the fact that we don't have water at the high school, and we're planning on hosting a football game, and we don't have water.
Water's back.
Okay. So at least that's one. I respectfully agree that this is, you're right, this is drifting into an important discussion that needs to be had. But in terms of what's on the floor, Mr. Hodges, did you have something else to?
A series of really important questions to ask about your process. Have you done price comparisons? Have you engaged all of our end users? Have you negotiated for the lowest cost? And can you provide evidence for those answers?
The RFP process, we don't negotiate for the lower cost. You just go through and you take the low bid. I believe there have been comparisons to other similar projects, if I recall
So there was nothing to compare. There was no drawings in the architect. So the presumption under doing an estimate would presume that somebody did a drawing. Your architect didn't draw this. We helped develop the scope with input from the users at the high school to get a scope of work that would get you a modern functioning theater for academic purposes. With that, we went to market and asked multiple people to bid it. We went to the Post-Dispatch, St. Louis American, went to MoCan, multiple plan rooms. We got it out broadly, your website, anywhere we could. Made phone calls, had 5, 6 bidders on the list. 2 ended up submitting bids. That's very common in the market right now, 2 bids. Dr. Terry said, you don't negotiate in an open bid scenario as a public entity. You accept the bids, you review them. So we had a sit-down meeting. This is all in the notes. I'm not telling you anything new. It's already in board docs. We had a de-scope meeting with both subs, went through and made sure we had the scope of work comparable, apples to apples. We understood the implications of schedule because there are huge schedule implications in this issue because equipment's delayed. We went through that with the team, wrote a recommendation. We do stand behind it very firmly. It's a fair bid marketed from a contractor who can execute the work, and the implications of the schedule were written in our recommendation.
For future bids, I'm learning clearly what are the steps that the board is asking for, and we'll move towards that for any future ones. So I do want to acknowledge that we're receiving some feedback to really map all this out.
Well, one more, just a technical question. I know that in the RFP, there was a provision made for, the request was initially for 1080p cameras and video, and that we were open to an upgrade. Does this final bid include a 4K option instead of buying equipment that is going to be outdated as soon as we install it?
Yeah. 8K is probably more up to date.
All right.
We left the 4K off due to cost savings with the option to add it. As the money panned out, and we were able to have more conversations. But yeah, so it would be what they call an ad if it was elected to be added. But this presentation does not include 4K.
And just from a technical standpoint, when you're looking at video stuff, even though you're talking about 4K and 1080p, even if you were to record something and go to YouTube with it, YouTube only runs it at 420 or 720. They do have high definition, but even if you had a 4K camera, their technology is not going to allow you to run that quality anyway. So you'd have to figure out why you need 4K.
All right. So the item for action presented to us is related to the Little Theater, $186,483 change order, right? It's been presented. I entertain a motion to approve.
Can I make one final comment before we entertain that motion, if I may?
You don't want to get to the discussion?
No, but we just don't want to have a discussion. The gentleman that Dr. Pusateri has standing before us just said, we don't have any drawings for this. So he just created a scope of work. In essence, they're flying blind. And they're asking us to be passengers on the plane that they're flying blind. And any board member that supports this and votes for this is a vote against good common sense. And it's a vote against what taxpayers want to see. Taxpayers do not want to see us boarding a plane where we're being told that we're flying blindly. That's not what taxpayers want to see.
That's where I respectfully disagree. I'm a real estate developer, and I know what this means in terms of a design build process. So that what he's talking about is a design build process, which is not uncommon in the industry. However, the bigger issue is that how did we get in the situation that we did not have plans or adequate plans to choose from? But we do have fortunate experience of having an owner's rep that is a fully integrated design build firm that helped us to come up with the design build solution. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So I wanted to make sure there was clarity there. I do agree that, we should not, nobody builds anything where they don't have a set of plans, an accurate set of plans that a contractor can look at and price accordingly. But the overarching issue, you keep unearthing issues, which I agree with, is that why are we in a situation where we got an inferior set of plans that has to go through additional design work, and we treat it as a design and build process? Now, the caveat to that is, it's probably better for us as a design and build process now, because we can really eliminate some of those contingency items or issues, because we have constructability taking place during the process. But I want to be clear that we did not price anything without it being designed. We just didn't have an adequate set of plans or plans at all to design this particular component of that building.
So so what happened is you decide what you want. You send it out, people tell you how much it's gonna cost, right? But you don't do at any point, once those come in, just decide among those things that you have. So that's
Or you can choose to go back out again if you're not happy with your.
okay, so how do you know that this is the best offer? If in fact you haven't done a broad suite of this kind of project in other places. So all you have to look at are the things that a bidder writes down. Right?
It could be much different this time from this time last year or this time 2 years ago. You didn't want to be looking at current projects. I think that it is possible that we can find something to measure the cost. There even could be some regional variance or variance on what the community is building, whether they're building a stock, stock.
I may have purchased this sound system exactly like yours, but it may have been 2 years ago.
I would
Right?
say
So the price would have been different anyway. Is that what you? Help me understand.
Yeah, price would be, the Francis House bid for a new building was, they expected to be 49 million, and it was about 100 million. It's the state of the market, and it's due to supply chain issues and labor shortages. We talk about labor here, it's the teaching staff, there's labor that contends here as well.
Separate and apart from that, there was a component of this scope of work that was undefined because the architect didn't complete it. The KAI stepped in and treated it as a design build process. So nothing was priced without being designed. There's a set of plans and specifications that go along with that was submitted to the general contractors to bid on. They bidded on that, we got numbers. And then that's how we got to, I think, this number here. That process was distributed throughout several meetings, plan rooms, and we got, how many bidders did we get? Two bidders, and we had to choose from 2 bidders. Why we got 2 bidders is the whole supply chain, whatever.
It's possible that the low bid, if we can come back with the same number, if we rebid, it's possible we can find a lower bidder, it's possible that their bid can go up or go down.
Okay. So, but that being the case, I just want to provide that clarity. I don't want to belabor the point. So we have information in the board docs.
How we should get to something that says, this is absolutely the best cost on here. I don't know, how do you do that? How do you do that? How could you say that? How could you say this is absolutely the best price on here?
We, in collaboration with Ron and going back to previous incarnations of the board, we've developed the desire and the plan to reach out to multiple organizations in town, especially minority and women business enterprises, to make sure we're advertising wherever there's availability. Certainly, if you know somebody, we're any members of the public listening, we have many bids going out as part of this project, and we encourage any business owners or folks who know somebody to go ahead and connect them to us. We'd love to give your business, especially if you have a better bid, especially if you're local. We want to support businesses who live in this community. We want to support minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. We're just not getting them. So we are reaching out. This is the best that we have for these bidders in this period.
Sure.
So over the course of all these projects, what we've encouraged the architect and the team to do is issue the drawings once. Don't issue any addendums if you can help it, because that just, these bidders will lose interest very quickly. Make sure the scope is clear, the timeline you give them to bid is reasonable, and then just encourage their participation through multiple calls, emails, pre-bid meetings. We did all those things on this process. So, I mean,
All right. So there's an item for action to be voted on. I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So
Get a second?
How do we get a roll call vote?
We could
just ask for one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like a roll call vote.
It's been moved and probably seconded that we approve the item for action as presented regarding the little theater. Is there any more discussion? All right. By roll call vote, Ms. Barnett?
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Dr. Petty,
No.
Mr. Hodge,
Yes.
Ms. Williams? Yes. Mr. Humphrey?
Yes.
All right. The ayes have it. So moved. So item number 9, items for information, SSD presentation.
You pull it up on your phone, and all you have to do is just click it off. Let me share the screen. Okay.
Click here. All right. Good evening, board members, members of the community. I am DeAndrea Player. I'm the Director of Special Education for Normandy. And with me, I have Barbara Champagne. She is one of my special education coordinators in the district. Dr. Cheryl Harris could not be with us today, but she did contribute to this presentation and some of the data that you'll see. So today I will speak with you about the partnership between Special School District as well as Normandy. The purpose of the partnership agreement is to guide conversations and to provide a tool to monitor these areas listed here. So we talk about staffing, we talk about teaching, learning, and accountability, professional learning, professional development, We talk about how we collaborate around responsibilities as well as resources. We talk about student services, data and technology, transportation, and career technical education. So the partnership agreement is not new in its format, but there were some changes to the partnership agreement this year, and you can see those changes listed there. There were some changes around staffing. There were some goals that were written. What was added to teaching, learning, and accountability, or standards and indicators, and the progress on those. In the area of collaboration, responsibilities, and resources, you will see a change around special school district administrators attending parent advisory councils in partner districts. Regarding student services, although we provide services throughout St. Louis County, you will see that there's been a shift in ensuring that you approach services through a lens of equity. And in addition, data and technology, you will also see that that's new. And again, looking through the lens of equity across St. Louis County and how we provide technical resources for students. The hyperlink there is the full document. So if you have not seen this document in its entirety, we ask that you take a look at it. Some additional components that were added this year is directors and special education coordinators will now meet annually at a minimum with this partner district superintendent. And so that would be myself, and I have 2 coordinators in the district. So we would meet with Dr. Ryder as interim superintendent to talk about our standards and indicators, as well as artifacts to our administrative performance. And that link is provided there as well to take a look at that. And so while this is not evaluative, it's an opportunity for us to receive feedback from our partner district. In addition, SSD directors and coordinators will present at the beginning of each school year. And we talk about the goals around numeracy, literacy, and social emotional learning that's aligned to the partner district CSIP. And so those presentations have been scheduled. Dr. Ryder and myself, as well as the liaison for Normandy, will participate in those conversations. And we will include this year engagement data for each school district. And then lastly, special education directors and coordinators will attend those parent advisory councils. And while we know we don't have a council just yet in Normandy, we do work closely with our fields as well as our families to make sure that they have an avenue to communicate and voice concerns with us, as well as to share those celebrations. So the assessment evaluation tool is completed by myself and Dr. Harris 2 times a year. We meet in the fall as well as in the spring. However, Dr. Harris and I meet more frequently. We meet at a minimum each month. And what we focus on are each of those categories that were listed. So special school district asks that each partner district board take a look at the partnership agreement, that you look at this acknowledgement here and sign this acknowledgement. So I'm going to pause just for a second so that you guys can read each of those bullets. So we ask that the superintendent, as well as the board for Normandy, as well as special school district, signs this agreement on an annual basis. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of data from this past school year. So this baseline data was collected at the end of June 2022. And what you'll see here are those categories again. You'll also see the average scores for Normandy, as well as the average scores across St. Louis County. So you'll see that while we had scores that were lower in St. Louis County, we also had scores that were higher in comparison to St. Louis County. And those rating scales are over to the right.
is a rating scale of some sort? What is?
Who does this data come from?
So this data comes from those conversations with Dr. Harris and myself, as well as stakeholders in the district. If you click on that link to the entire document in its entirety, you will see each of those indicators listed under the categories. And so we assign a numerical number listed to your right to each of those categories. So 0 meaning that whatever that indicator is, that it's not fully implemented just yet here in Normandy. 1 meaning that there is an approach in place. We're not fully implementing that particular indicator. For number 2, we are fully implementing that indicator. And then 3, full implementation, as well as some positive outcomes in that particular area. So I can give one, okay.
Inside the document, these categories are explained.
Exactly.
Absolutely, okay.
Yep, those indicators are explained in its entirety. And I just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview of what the data has looked like so far. So from that data, Dr. Harris and myself, with the input from those stakeholders, created an action plan. So although we'll continue to monitor each of those categories and each indicator, these are the areas we'll pay closer attention to. So we'll focus highly on career technical education, how we collaborate with Normandy around those CTE options at North Tech, as well as those CTE options here at Normandy. We'll work on how we advertise those opportunities, how we communicate that with families, how we bring those students in for those types of visits or informational sessions. So this year we'll be working closer with the counselors to make sure that any opportunities that are here in Normandy, as well as opportunities that are at North Tech, are available to any students that could benefit from those types of programs. In addition to there being focused on CTE in the district, we'll continue to focus on staffing. Again, these are areas that we're wanting to improve and make sure that we're fully implementing with positive outcomes. And so you will see those listed there as well. And an example of the second bullet where we have already kind of partnered and collaborated around alternative staffing models is with our Phoenix project. So we do have special education staff that supports that model. And then lastly, focusing a heightened focus on student services in the district. Paying particular attention to how we implement transition from pre-kindergarten all the way through post-graduation. And to conclude, this is the timeline that has been outlined for us. As I've shared, Dr. Harris and I, with stakeholder input, completed the agreement evaluation at the end of June. So that's the baseline data. And we can provide you with the data for each indicator as well. The second bullet, presenting at the board, which is done by the end of September. And then lastly, asking that you guys sign the agreement between Special School District and Normandy by the end of October. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
I have a question, but I just want to say thank you guys. I want to say thank you to the Special School District for years and years of absolute fabulous support.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to echo that. My son would not have graduated from high school had it not been for the services of SSD and in particular the all-day option at North Tech. He was a Normandy student who needed more, which leads into my question. I know there have been some changes in the model at North Tech. Can you speak to the change in that model and how it will impact the anticipated impact on our students?
Sure. So that model changed maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not a recent change in terms of North Tech providing gen ed services in the district. And so now those gen ed services are, of course, brought back to the partner school districts. So for those students who would like to access North Tech, They will continue to have their gen ed courses in their partner district and then receive their technical courses at North Tech. And they've been able to expand on those North Tech opportunities as a result of that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, technical stuff. Have you all ever had a separate agreement with something like Job Corps? I know we used to have one, but.
Not that I'm aware of. It's a possibility, but not that I'm aware of. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 10, board comments. Mr. Humphrey,
I have none.
Mr. Williams, Mr. Hodge,
I have none.
Dr. Petty.
Let me see, am I muted here? I have no more comments at this time. It's late in the hour. We'll get to it.
All right, well, I'll just close this out. I am encouraged by the amount of effort that, has been demonstrated beginning this school year, particularly with my fellow board members, rolling up of the sleeves and the amount of attention that you're committing to this district. You're getting calls from everywhere, and you're being responsive, and your call to action is very much appreciated, and how you're attempting to make sure that there's some process in place so that we can honor a process and execute accordingly. I'm encouraged the teachers, staff, and the administrators. It's a heavy lift, and it's a lot of work before us. But accountability, we all got to own where we are. But we also all have to own the solutions to getting us where we're trying to go. So I encourage you to continue to work hard. Thank you. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to.
One more thing. I just thank you so much for the closing. I just want to acknowledge that we've had 27 participants to join us virtually. They posed some really important questions, and it should be acknowledged that we have several parents that have posed questions. And so Alex,
I have all the questions written down.
Alex has all of the questions written down, and we promise that we will respond to those questions at the appropriate time. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Mr. Hodge. And I think we'll continue. Thank you for our tech IT department. I see we have some new hardware. Thank you, and let's continue continuous improvement. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to move to exec session. By roll call. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, by roll call vote.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Dr. Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Hodge,
Yes.
Mr. Williams, Mr. Humphrey.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.